Aloha, and welcome to today's study in the book of Acts. Today's sermon is brought to you by Lock and Load, a radio program by Pastor Mike Chan of Southwest Calvary in Buckeye, Arizona. In Acts, we see that there is a continuous stream of lessons to be learned and teachings to be heard. So let's all lock and load and join Pastor Mike with open ears so that we may hear and apply all of Acts' lessons into our lives.
Many of us have heard the voice of the Lord, but we have not responded. And you have that opportunity today. In verse 32, it says, saying, I am the Lord of thy fathers, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, you don't have to turn there, but verse 13 and 14 of Exodus chapter 3, lock and load on this. It says, Moses said unto God, behold, when I am come unto the children of Israel, what shall I say to them? The God of your fathers has sent me unto you. And they shall say to me, what is his name, referring to God? What shall I say to them? And then God told Moses, I am that I am. He said, thus thou shalt tell the children of Israel, I am sent you. I am sent to you. So now as Stephen is sharing this, I am the God of thy fathers, I believe he's using the same lingua franca of back then. I am that I am, right? Popeye, spinach. I am that I am, right? And here's Moses. Who should I send? Who should I tell them that sent me? I've been in the desert in the Midian for 40 years. Now I'm going back to the people of God. What should I say? And God says, I am that I am sent you, right? I am. Stephen, referring to that I am, says that. And then notice what it says in verse 32 at the end. It says, Moses trembled and durst not behold. If you're taking notes, write down Hebrews chapter 12, verse 21. And so terrible was the sight that Moses said, I exceedingly fear and quake. So here we're told that Moses trembled. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation, necessarily you didn't cause trouble, but you're in a situation, you're shaking and you're trembling. I've been told by my friends whose parents, when my friends were younger, they would come over to, I remember a particular friend came over to a house and knocked on my door. He was like, Mike, I need to talk. And my friend was shaking. He was about 12, 13 years old. And I was like, what's wrong? I can see his face is like discolored. And you know that angry cry? You're so angry that you're crying, and you're crying because you're angry. And I was like, what's going on? Take a deep breath. He's like, oh, he's kicking dirt. And I was like, yo, take it easy. My dad's going to kill you now. What's going on? He's like, and then he finally embraced me and started crying on my shoulder. He's like, my parents are getting a divorce. That kind of trembling. And I just held him. And I just said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was a teenager myself. I'm like, what do I say? I'm just holding him. And this is when I'm like hoping my dad or my mom would walk by. But I just said, I'm sorry. And even then when I was young, I said, you know what? I don't know, but God knows. God knows. And see, Moses here at the sight of I am that I am sent you, he's trembling. Remember that scene in Lion King? When the hyenas heard the name Mufasa, Mufasa, ooh, right? That's the kind of I am that Stephen is sharing with the Sanhedrin. That same I am that I'm mentioning to you, Sanhedrin leaders, is the same I am that spoke to Moses at the burning bush, right? And it goes on in verse 33. Put off your shoes from your feet, for the place where thou standest is holy ground. Put off thy shoes from thy feet, for the place where thou standest is holy ground. Now, if you're taking notes, lock and load on Joshua chapter 5. Joshua chapter 5, you can write it down and I'll read it to you. Verses 13 through 15, it says this. The only other time that God asks another individual to take off their shoes And it came to pass Joshua was by Jericho, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said unto him, Art thou for us or for our adversaries? Nay, but as a captain of the host of the Lord, I am now come. And then Joshua fell at his face on the earth, did worship, and said unto him, What saith my Lord unto his servant? And verse 15, the captain of the Lord of hosts said unto Joshua, Loose thy shoe from off thy feet, for the place where thou standest on is holy. So Joshua did so. Where did Joshua learn this from? His mentor Moses. You see, Joshua approaches a guy. The guy ended up being the Lord Jesus Christ. He had a sword in his hand. Are you for us or are you for our adversary? Right? Are you for the left? Or are you for the right? Who are you with? I'm neither. I'm independent, I say. No. Joshua said, he fell on the earth, worshiped. What do you say unto your servant? And he says, I am the captain of the hosts. Right? Jesus appears to Moses. Hey, take off your chanclas. Right? In Korean, it's called sirapa. Right? Back in the 70s, you guys called it thongs. Called it slippers, sandals. In Hawaii, it's called slipas, Now, question has to be asked, why did God ask Moses to take off his sandals? Now, I'm going to read to you some facts. Now, in the Korean culture and most Asian cultures, Japanese, to Hawaii, to Indonesia, Thailand. If you ever go to any Asian's house, they'll tell you to take off your shoes before you enter in. It's more for hygiene purposes. And I just want to share some facts because as I was studying for this, did God want Moses to take off his sandals because he was bringing dirt onto wherever he was? Let me read to you some facts. This might want to change your mind about shoes in your house. Approximately 421,000 different types of bacteria can be found on shoes. According to a 2008 study by the University of right here in Arizona, of the shoes examined in the study, 96% of them found to have coliforms, a bacterial indicator of level of sanitation of foods and water that is also universally found in feces of humans and warm-blooded animals. 20% of the shoes found to have E. coli along with 7 different types of bacteria. Author Charles Gerba, microbiologist at the University of Arizona, explained, and I'll just read to you this quote, and I'm not going to read to you anything else because it's kind of nasty. The common occurrence, 96% of coliform and E. coli bacteria on the outside of shoes indicates frequent contact with fecal material, which most likely originates from floors in public restrooms or contact with animal fecal material outdoors. Our study also indicates that the bacteria can be tracked by shoes over a long distance into your home or your personal space after the shoes were contaminated with bacteria, end quote. So he said that the article says that bringing in shoes to the house leads to 90 to 99% of transfer of bacteria from dirty shoes. Nah, you're like, man, Pastor Mike, you're gonna make me get new carpet for my house? Wife saw, see, I told you so. I told you so. Now, I'm not gonna read the rest of it. It's pretty nasty on why shoes are not allowed in the house. But it made me wonder, why did God allow shoes to be removed from Moses? Now, in the text it says, remove your shoes. Why? For the ground is what? Holy. Why was it holy? Because the presence of the Lord was there, right? Now, let me read to you, if you know who Pastor Tony Evans is, let me read to you what he says about this portion. he talks about humility and then the nothingness of mankind. So it says, removing his shoes demonstrated his humility in God's presence. Please notice that what God used in order to speak to Moses. He used an ordinary object. The bush was already there. It was simply an ordinary bush that had been invaded by God's supernatural presence that resulted in extraordinary encounter. I don't know how God is going to meet you, but I do know that any old bush will do. God can use the most ordinary thing, set it to fire to it as a greater manifestation of his power and glory. But let me remind you, if this is going to happen, you cannot be, listen to this, you cannot be an asbestos Christian. People put on asbestos suits when they work in close proximity to flame so they don't catch on fire. Some of us believers will never burn the brilliance of the Holy Spirit's power made manifest in and through us because we wear evangelical asbestos suits. We don't really want to get close to the fire of God's presence, so to protect ourselves from that which we cannot explain or rationalize, we put on intellectual, emotional asbestos attire. And we come to church leaving on asbestos shoes, all the while we wonder why we don't catch on fire for the Lord. God's miraculous manifestations are for those who have the faith required to enter into his presence, as well as the humility to surrender his instructions. Now he continues on. God stops Moses and tells him to take off his shoes. Taking off your shoes is to identify with who you are as a human. Man was originally made from the ground. God made Adam from the dust of the ground before God breathed life into him. So essentially, all mankind was originally come from the ground. When you or I die, much of our physical body will decay, return back to the ground. Taking off his shoes reminded Moses of who he was and how high he should stand in God's presence. Any pair of shoes that Moses would have worn would have a sole. Even if the sole was 1/4 inch thick, it was 1/4 inch too thick and too high in God's presence. Not only that, but on his best day, Moses needed to be reminded that he isn't much more than dignified dirt. God can do more with dignified dirt, but I didn't want Moses to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, Romans 12:3. Moses got called out. I want to remind you of who you are. Take off your shoes and connect with that which you really are tied to, and that is dirt. But the difference now is that this dirt is a special dirt because this dirt is holy dirt. Holy dirt on holy ground is something that God can do something marvelous with, end quote. Interesting. A 1/4 inch pair of sandals is too thick in the presence of God. And I think it's both. Is it a physical germ thing or is it a holy thing? I think it's both. You see, when we bring in our dirt and sandals, we bring in dirt into a holy presence, right? But then at the same time, we put on sandals because why? There's no contact with the ground. And God wanted Moses contacted, in a sense, connect with the ground again. As Tony Evans was saying, it'll be dignified there. He wanted to be reminded of who he was, right? And so too, when God calls you and I, all he's asking you to do is take off yourself. Jesus says what? Deny yourself. Take up your what? Cross and follow me. He calls you, but there's got to be a response. You got to deny yourself. Moses could have said, you want me to what? Take off my sandals? My stomach's not feeling good. I got to go. This is weird. No, Moses says, here I am. And what does he do? He takes off his sandals. Whether it's one of those, fancy lace sandals, I have no idea. Or if it's a slipper you just slip on. But he takes off his sandals and he steps into the presence of God. and there's a burning bush, the bush is not being burned. Another thing that doesn't mention in the book of Exodus or here is heat. Now, in a matter of a few hours, it's going to be like 112, right? When you and I go outside, you're just like, it's going to be hot. The door handle is going to be hot. The seat's going to be hot. The steering wheel is going to be hot. I'm feeling hot, hot, hot. You know, it's going to be hot, right? Now, Moses is seeing this burning bush. Now, was it 5 foot tall? Was it 8 foot tall? Was it 3 foot tall? I have no idea. But there's a burning bush. Moses is having a conversation with a burning bush. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were told in Daniel chapter 3 that the fire, the smell of fire, nor the singe of the flames were upon them. You see, you and I cannot be afraid of being in God's fire. Because why? We're not going to get burned. We're going to get changed. That's what's going to happen. You see, if Moses didn't take off his slippers, right? I think when Moses took off his slippers, unbeknownst to Moses, I think God anointed it. Why? Because when he put his slippers back on, he was a changed man. Because with the slippers, he would go to march to Pharaoh, Charlton Heston. Let my people go. Yul Brynner saying, etc., 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 right? Let my people go, right? But if you know who Pancho Juarez is, I always thought Pancho Juarez looked like, Yul Brynner. But here he goes, Moses, right? Moses is now wearing sandals that was changed as well, so to speak. See, God takes what you are and what you were, anoints it so that you can carry on the work of the Lord. You see, all of us have scars. I have a scar on my knee that you guys can probably see, right? But we also have scars in our hearts. Doubting Thomas. If I don't see the scars on his hands, on his side, I will not believe. Jesus says, oh, really? I'm just going to walk through this wall. Hey, what's up, Tommy? How are you? It's been a long time. Thomas, check it out. Come touch it, bro. Right? Jesus is like, hey, check it out. Look at it. It was this soldier that did this to me. It's like, check out this star. Some of us likes to boast about our scars. But most of us have scars in our hearts that are so deep, we don't want to share them. See, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3 and 4, it says, we ought to comfort one another with the same comfort that we received. So therefore, the pain that you're going through, the fire that you're experiencing is not necessarily for you. It could be, just might be, for someone else. So Moses takes off his sandals. He's in the presence of God. In verse 34, God tells Moses, I have seen the affliction of my people which is in Egypt, and I have heard their groanings, and I have come down to deliver them. And now come, I will send thee into Egypt. I love this. If you're taking any notes down, God sees, God hears, and God delivers. Okay? No matter where we're at, as an individual or as a people, God sees, God hears, God delivers. God sees our astronomical gas prices. That I'm paying $20 for a gallon of milk soon. Is it me or did our food prices go up? I love food, but I might become skinny here soon from just not being able to buy the food that I want. God sees though. God hears the groanings of the United States of America. These prices has got to stop. I saw a picture of 7-Eleven fulfilling their prophecy. Their gas prices is now 7-Eleven. Some gas prices in Los Angeles County area, $8 and something. I mean, I'm joking around, but in reality, as a father, as moms, grandparents, honey, I don't know if we can go to Rome this year. What? You promised me on our 40th anniversary, you're going to take me to Rome. honey, with prices the way it is, I think wife picks out her baking spoon. You're going to take me to Rome or else. Honey, that spatula is like $50. We can eBay it, right? But we're getting there. I'm hearing from pastors that more and more people are coming, some of the larger churches that have a benevolence fund. Some of the larger churches, the pastors I know, they're saying that their pantry is running out because they can't afford to keep up. Their benevolence fund's going low. Because why? As parents and grandparents, what's the number one thing that you need to put? Food on the table, right? You get to the point like, I don't know if I can afford this Tesla anymore. I might need to trade it in. We're at that state. But I love this because why? God sees and God hears and God delivers. God says, I have seen the affliction of my people. And I don't know about you, this is very, very comforting. I want to read to you some notes from a prisoner, and we'll close here at verse 36. But his name is Tyrone Jackson. He writes this. This is his bio. My name is Tyrone Jackson. I am an inmate with the Mississippi Department of Correction. I have been incarcerated for the past 10 years, and I'm currently serving a sentence of life without parole. It has been the grace of God that has carried me thus far. I have experienced firsthand the love of God over these past 10 years. It is his love that brought me back into fellowship with him. Serving a life sentence has not been easy, but my God has promised me that he would never leave me nor forsake me, and he hasn't. And he has been with me every step of the way. He is faithful. So then Tyrone Jackson writes a devotional for a ministry called House of Hope Prison Ministry. And he wrote this devotional, and I'm just going to read it to you. You can write the verses down for your later reference, but it's Psalms 34. Psalm 34, verse 4, verse 6, verse 15, verse 17, and verse 19. Number 1, Tyrone writes, God hears. And in Psalm 34, verse 4, it says, I have sought the Lord, and he heard me and delivered me out of all my fears. And he says that it takes persistent prayers, it takes the fear of the Lord, and it takes trust. So God hears. Number 2, God saves. In verse 6 of Psalm 34, this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. And he says, thirdly, God sees. Verse 15 of Psalm 34, the eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry. And number 4, God delivers. In Psalm 34, verse 17 and 19, it says, the righteous cry, and the Lord heareth, and delivereth them out of all their troubles. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them out of them all. He says we can take refuge in God, knowing he is our help, our deliverer, our provider. Don't give up on him, because he will not give up on you. He is able, for he is faithful. Now, this is a man that wrote that little mini devotional in jail without parole. You see, if you think about it, Moses was a murderer too, right? Now, do you think maybe Pharaoh had headhunters out for him? Dog the bounty hunter. Dog, go find my guy. He took out one of my taskmasters. Now, by then, Moses, living a life as a farmer, probably looked more like a farmer, unrecognizable, right? Moses comes back to Pharaoh, let my people go. What are you talking about? The Jewish people saying, who are you? Why have you come? And he says, I am that I am sent me. Who? What's his name? I am that I am sent me. And the Jews were encouraged and all of a sudden was believing in the deliverer to be Moses. Remember, they rejected him. Now, closing in verse 35 and 36, it says, Moses whom they refused, who made thee a ruler and a judge, the same did God send to be a ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the angel which delivered to him in the bush. Now, the Lord, obviously. Verse 36, and he brought them out After that, he had showed wonders and signs in the land of Egypt and in the Red Sea and in the wilderness 40 years.
We're going to pause here in today's lesson. This message is brought to you by Lock and Load, a radio program of Pastor Mike Chon of Southwest Calvary in Buckeye, Arizona. If you've missed any studies from this sermon series, or would just like to learn more about all the ministries Pastor Mike is a part of, you can always go to his website, www.southwestcalvary.com. That's southwestcalvary.com. Make sure to tune in next time to hear the rest of today's study in the book of Acts.